Ever since I started learning about Australia, I've always wondered, why is it called Australia? And this one's going to be a bit of an educational video where I reckon lots of people will learn something new. Now this video is sponsored by Manscaped, and later on I'm going to tell you why every man needs a lawnmower 4.0.
Around 2,300 years ago, a man named Aristotle had an idea. He knew that where he lived in Greece was nearer the North Pole than the South Pole. In thinking about the world and the shape of its land, he figured there must be a region bearing the same relation to the Southern Pole as the place we live in bears to our pole. About 400 years later, in the 100 CE, Ptolemy added to this suggestion, speculating that the North and South hemispheres must be balanced with equal amounts of land and ocean on either side in order to keep the Earth level. Although little to nothing was known about the world south of Africa and Asia, Cicero, in his work Somnium Scipionis, gave the southern region a name. He called it Singulus Australis, with Singulus translating from Latin into zone, and Australis meaning southern.
So I'm getting straight away then that basically Australia means southern. With a few tweaks, of course. Australia means southern. Makes sense, I suppose. But on a separate point, when Aristotle and the like were around, I think it is truly incredible. They didn't get everything right. I think everyone can agree with that. They didn't necessarily get everything right. They made theories that weren't necessarily always correct, but they did get a hell of a lot right. And to think what they were able to do with the technology they had back then compared to, say, now, it's so impressive. The fact that they knew they were closer to the North Pole, I think even that is incredible. But I think that sums up science, and I'm generalizing science here, in that, you know, scientists can always come up with theories and things that they think are correct. And quite often, those things are correct and are fact. However, science is always open to be proven wrong. That's what I love about science. You know, someone can have a theory of something that is seen to be correct for a long time. However, if someone can prove them wrong, then they will always accept that. I love that about science. Anyway, before we go on any further, we're going to go over to this guy with our advert. Whoa, what are you doing in the bathroom? I'm just having a shave and using my lawnmower 4.0 from Manscaped. I'll see you in a second. Manscaped kindly sent me their lawnmower 4.0. Now this is a must for the modern man, which I'd like to think I am. I've got to keep my nether regions nice and tidy for my lovely wife. Now this is brilliant because it's waterproof. It means you can do it in the shower, keep everything nice and tidy. Hang on. It's got a light so you can see where you're going. And also, the ceramic blades give it an advanced skin-safe technology. You don't want any accidents. I love this package as well because it comes with ball toner and ball deodorant. They will thank you, I promise. But you also get a Manscaped bag for when you go away, you can take it with you. Plus, looks like newspaper, but if you want to do it outside of your bath, stick some of these down and it will keep the floor nice and tidy. There is that. But also they sent the Weed Whacker. Hang on. Who would have thought you would have seen me doing that live on YouTube, eh? This is also brilliant. The technology in this is fantastic. That you are going to get rid of those pesky nose hairs that no one wants to see. Like that. Now, if you would like to purchase any of this, go to manscaped.com and put in the code ROBREACTS and that will get you 20% off plus free shipping. Let's get back to the video. Okay, let's carry on with this video then.
All land within this southern zone, which they expected there to be a lot of, would therefore become known as Terra Australis, or a southern land. Theories and beliefs of this unfound Terra Australis remained an established and accepted idea within the scientific community for centuries, despite a complete lack of evidence. Maps throughout the ages can all be found featuring a vague and ever-changing landmass at the southern reaches of the world.
I love looking at old maps because there's different ways of doing maps, but also as new territory, new countries and new land is discovered, the maps get ever so slightly changed over time and evolve into what we see as a more accurate. Granted, Google Maps and normal maps aren't very accurate because South Africa looks Africa looks tiny and Greenland looks huge. So straight away they're slightly wrong, but I love seeing the evolution when they found new land.
It was only around the 1500s, as the age of European exploration began, and expeditions were sent to every corner of the world, that this southern land began retreating. No matter how far south boats ventured, no great Terra Australis could be found. What they were beginning to realize was that the Earth is in fact unbalanced, and the North Hemisphere actually does contain most of the land on Earth. This half of the globe is 39% land, while the Southern Hemisphere has only a mere 19% land coverage. What this means is that 67% or 2/3 of Earth's land is in the Northern Hemisphere. Essentially, Terra Australis, the missing half of Earth, didn't exist, but people were still searching for it. Around this time, the Dutch East India Company was shipping spices and other goods from the Far East to the West, and a large landmass was observed south of the island Java by around the year 1606.
God, I just got to show you that. There we go. Look, so they sort of map it as they go round, but there's clearly bits that they've missed and they haven't been able to map. So they're slowly discovering what we now call Australia, or the southern land that they were hoping to find, but they're only finding bits and pieces. That's absolutely fascinating.
6. It was given the name Terra Australis Incognita, meaning unknown southern land. This was the first time a name similar to Australia was attributed to the land, but this was more of a placeholder name rather than an official title. Then, in 1644, a Dutch sailor, Abel Tasman, returned to a land close to Australia that he had discovered, which he called Van Diemen's Land, but today we'd call Tasmania. On his way, he sailed along the larger, unexplored land and finally gave it a name that stuck. He called it New Holland. Yep, well, actually, he called it Novus Hollandia, but they mean the same thing. And
isn't it interesting as well how when countries find new places that they think are uninhabited, United States, what we call now United States, and Australia as well, is how they use their names from their current country. So, for example, over in the United States, I live in England in a place called Hampshire. The county I live in is called Hampshire. And where is there a New Hampshire? Over in the United States. And part of me thinks it's a lack of originality or a lack of imagination. But then also I do realise that you're almost claiming that land as your own for your country. So you use the sort of same names.
And everyone kind of liked it, or at least accepted it. The title of Terra Australis was taken away, and actually given to the area where Antarctica was later to be found. Although at this point it had not been discovered, and it was just a coincidence that land ended up being there. Around the same time, however, the Spanish explorer Pedro Fernández de Queiroz landed on another tropical island chain nearby. A little backstory on this guy. So he was Spanish, but at the time, Spain was ruled by the Habsburgs, who were Austrian. So he was sort of obligated to promote Austria as much as Spain. So he gave the lands he found the name Southern Austrian Land of the Holy Spirit, which he wrote in Spanish as Australia del Espíritu Santo.
That is not a catchy name, is it? That is not a catchy name to claim as a sort of a country or a land, is it?
Binding the Latin word for south, austral, with the name Austria to make Australia. Then, in an English letter written by Sir Richard Hakluyt about the lands discovered by Fernandez, he misspelled the name, dropping the first I, and instead wrote Australia by accident. So finally, the name Australia had been created and assigned. The only problem was that, well, Fernandez discovered these islands, today called Vanuatu, and gave them the name. So
what the hell? So Australia wasn't even called Australia because another place was called Australia. I've never heard of Vanuatu. I've never heard of that. But so they were originally called Australia. That is incredible. How the hell did it go from that being called Australia to Australia being called Australia?
Australia was over here, while New Holland was this ever-expanding region down here, and things didn't change for 150 years. Finally, in 1794, two botanists, George Shaw and Sir Joseph Banks, endeavored to record some of the flora of this expansive place called New Holland. In their report titled Zoology and Botany of New Holland, they described the continent as the vast island, or rather continent, of Australia, or Australasia, or New Holland.
Make your mind up. See, they don't even know what to call it. And I don't know if that's due to the time period where it's not the social media and the ease of communication like it is today, is it? And a lot of paper messages that have to be sent across the world, maybe. And it's not as easy to communicate. And I think that sums this up, really. 1, 2, 3 different names.
This was the first time the name Australia was attributed to this land, rather than some other islands in the Pacific Ocean. So basically, people were starting to get confused or conflicted on what should be called what. Remember, people were still saving the name Terra Australis for a place equal in size to Europe and Asia, so anything smaller had to go by a different name. Then, in 1804, Sir Joseph Banks convinced another explorer, Matthew Flinders, to begin using the term Terra Australis for this massive island he studied. Flinders agreed and summed up the situation quite nicely by saying this. You can pause if you...
I'll pause it so you guys can read, and I'll read in my head, because I'm rubbish at reading out loud. So basically, he says there is no probability that a big expanse of land will ever be found that is equal to the size of Europe.
You actually want to read it. But basically, most of the southern hemisphere had been mapped or at least visited, and it was becoming clear that this Terra Australis was non-existent, and New Holland was looking like the next best thing. In a footnote, Flinders also wrote, "Had I permitted myself any innovation on the original term, it would be to convert it to Australia." And this basically settled it. Australia is the misspelling of a name originally invented from two other similar sounding names for a much smaller island, which used a name originally invented for a far larger, unproven landmass. Flinders pushed the name to be used by the British Colonial Office, and they agreed in 1824, marking its first official use, and it's been in use ever since. I hope you guys enjoy.
Just incredible story that I had no idea about. I'm really wondering if Aussies know about this story, and partly it was the search to find this huge landmass in the southern hemisphere that never happened, and so part of Australia is the word southern. But did you know that it was then actually Australia was attributed to the little islands on the side? I do apologise if anyone's from there. Absolutely incredible story. I don't even know what to think. Look, we're at Australia now, and as I said, a lot of it seemed to be from the social communication side of things that were very tricky back in the time that caused Australia to be called Australia. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you check out Manscaped for that 20% off and the free shipping using the code ROBREACTS. And I will catch you next time.